Alright, hey, what's up? I'm just going to get right into it here. This is what you'll see when you open it. There's a bunch of crap going on, a bunch of knobs and buttons. These little wiggly things are wiggling. These little things are flim-flamming around. These little things beep booping. Don't worry, we'll get to all that. Alright, so we'll start up here. This is where your sound starts, the oscillators. There are two of them. They have different texture types here. Both of them are turned on. This is the volume of each one. Actually, there are three oscillators, but we'll get to that later. So we'll just turn down this second one for now and just focus on this first one. So right now, these are the shapes. You drag this up here, and actually you can see on the oscilloscope up here. Here's the main volume, by the way. You're probably gonna have to be constantly readjusting this because depending on how many notes you hold down, the volume could be different. So anyway, here's the shape. Here's a sine wave. It's like a pretty, very simple. Here's a triangle. And then here's a square. And triangle is basically like a square that's been kind of filtered down a little bit. It's less harsh. Here's a saw. Kind of buzzy, good for strings and brass. Here is like a inverted saw. It sounds exactly the same if you just have one of them, but we'll get to that later. Here's some weird like digital shit. I don't know, I don't really use that, but here's the volume. So then let's get another saw for the second one and bring that in. You can see all it's doing is getting louder, so I'm going to change the shape to a square. And you can actually see the volume up here now that we have two of these oscillators in. The volume's actually passing this line right here and going up into the clipping. You can actually see it on the oscilloscope too. The waveform actually exits the oscilloscope. So you want to turn that down and make sure everything stays inside the bounds and doesn't get over this line. Oh, I'm getting over a cold for the winter, so if like I just stopped talking for a bit, it means I had to cough. So like I'm gonna edit that out so you don't have to hear that, but sorry about that. But so yeah, you can have two different oscillators, different shapes. You can mix them, you can tune them apart from each other. So let's get two squares, and then this is the big tuning, and then this is like the little slight tuning. So actually, if you want to set a knob back to default to where it was, you just double click it and it goes back. So oh yeah, I also don't know how to play piano, so I hope you like here C major scale, so because I can only do the white keys, so have fun with that, I guess. But yeah, here's the tuning knobs. Range on them is actually pretty high, and then here's the fine tuning. So you could tune the oscillators like an octave apart. That would be 12 semitones. You'll just pretty much have to do that by ear a lot of the time, see if it sounds good or not. Another cool thing you can do, if you have two oscillators, you can tune them apart slightly using the fine tuning, and we'll hear that. can see up here in the oscilloscope, it gets like this motion to it. One thing you want to do when detuning oscillators like that is to split the tuning, like tune the one up and then tune the other one down by the same amount, or your overall sound will be tuned above or below if you're like playing with other instruments, but this keeps it balanced. You can get pretty severe. So that's pretty cool. Another way you can actually do that a lot quicker, here's a unison. So I'm just going to use the one oscillator, the left one, and this is the number of copies it will copy itself. So right now there are 3 copies of oscillator 1, 5, 7, all the way up to 15. But this second thing down here, this unison detune, detunes the copies from each other, similar to what we were just doing with these little knobs. So here, I'll do that. And then this is the amount of copies again. So I think you start getting diminishing returns up around like 7. I mean, it goes up to 15, but that gets pretty noisy. So I don't know, like 7 or 9 is pretty decent. So I'll go through that. So yeah, if you use both oscillators and put them up to 15 voices each, I mean, you could get like 30 oscillators stacked on top of each other, which is pretty cool. And I think Helm's pretty good on CPU too, so you can pretty much feel free to do that and just go nuts. You can see down here the number of voices. It says to 4 voices. That can go all the way up to 32. 4 voices default. It just means you can hold 4 notes at the same time until they start dropping the old ones. So I don't know, I'll try and do that. Oh, here, let me turn this off. You can hear as I keep going up the keyboard and playing more notes, trying to hold down more notes, it starts dropping the low ones. So I don't know, I just jack this all the way up to 32. If you start running out of CPU power, if it starts bogging your CPU down, you can lower it. Most hardware synths have about like 8 to 16. Software synths can go up pretty high, 32, 64. So I don't know, I just jack it up to 32 on Helm, so it doesn't really matter too much. There's another oscillator, a third oscillator called the sub-oscillator. This also has this wave shape like that. You can't really tune it like the other ones, but its purpose is basically to like add a third oscillator an octave below. So here's just the left one, and then we'll bring in the sub. See, it's pretty much the same thing, it's just lower. So that's pretty good if you want to add some deep, like low end of the sound. Sometimes a sub oscillator, since it's so low, pardon me, if you use waveforms like this square and this saw, like you can hear, it's pretty clicky. So for sub, I usually like to use like softer waveforms like a sine wave or a triangle. That's very quiet, you can barely hear that. But I mean, that's up to you. If you want the saw, I mean, we'll get to the filter. If stuff's too clicky, which it is right now for sure, we're gonna get to that later when we do the filter. And then over here in the mixer, you got white noise. Sounds great. You know, I don't know why they don't put that in more songs. It's really cool. But actually, white noise is cool later. You can use it to make like a percussion effect. Let me try this again here. Right now this is an envelope. We'll get to that later. It's just used to animate the volume or a knob or something, but I made it like a short click so you can see it's animating this green bar. But we'll get rid of that. Noise is also cool if, here, wait, let's turn this up. It's good for the filter. So that's what a filter does. If you want it to be more pronounced, you give it like more texture to work with. You can add in some noise. But I don't know. Honestly, white noise doesn't seem too much use in modern music. It did back in like the 70s when synths just came out and people were going nuts. People thought it was really cool. But I don't know. You could use it for some things, I guess. Okay, what's the next section here? The amp envelope. Okay, let's just use... I'm actually going to filter this saw down. It's a little too bright. It's going to get annoying if we keep... There we go. That should be better. Alright, next is the envelopes. There are 3 envelopes. We're just going to focus on this amplitude envelope, which means the volume of the oscillators. So there are 4 stages to it. There's the attack, which is you press the key, you hold the key down. As soon as you hold the key down, the volume starts rising. And you keep holding the key and it'll automatically keep going and it'll eventually cross this peak and start decaying, which is the second stage. And then it'll hold here, which is the sustain level, the volume that it will hold at. And then you let go, and then it disconnects from the sustain and dies away with the release. So I don't know, let's just hear what this looks like. I like Helm because I recommend it for beginners because it actually animates. You can see the LFOs are animating, step sequences animating. You'll see a little dot actually animate along this envelope, which is really cool. So you hear the volume coming up. I'm keeping the key held. It'll start decaying eventually. And then it holds here. You can adjust that. And then when I let go, it'll go into the release. A simple envelope is just like on-off, no attack, no release, sustain up all the way. So you can see it forms like kind of a square. It's also called like an organ envelope because this is what like old style organs could only do this. Like there was no attack or release or anything fun on them. So it's basically on-off when you hold the key. So you can add some attack. Now you notice when I let go of the keys, it just cuts off completely. That's because the release is all the way down. So if you want to like let it die away a little more, when you let go of the keys, you just turn the release up some. So that's pretty cool. You can also make like a percussive sound with the decay. If you want to make like a bell sound where you hold the key and it decays like this, But now, like, if I let go of the key before it's done decaying, it just cuts off. And you don't want that. So if you want the bell noise to continue even after you let go of the key, so you can just like tap the key and it'll play, make the release equal to the decay. Now I can just tap the keys. The ADSR envelope's kind of hard to wrap your head around. I mean, like, I don't know, it took me a while to sort of get it, so you're kind of just going to have to play around with it and see what it all does. You can grab the little pieces right here. Let's see if I can grab that. Yeah, that's pretty cool. So that's nice. Instead of having to dick around over here, you can just do that. Helm is going to spoil you for other synths because they don't have this picture. They don't have like the little dots animating. A lot of synths, they'll just have 4 knobs. It'll just say amp envelope and it'll just have 4 knobs. And you'll just have to turn it with the knobs. So I like Helm to learn on because it actually like lets you see what's happening, you know? But okay, so let's just do a real simple envelope now. Let's move on to the filter. Now this is the fun part right up here. There are 2 parts to the filter. There's the cutoff frequency, which is where it starts. Basically, it starts cutting off the higher frequencies. You can see this is like a picture. The lower frequencies are down here, and it's letting them through. And then it starts rolling off when you get up higher. So it sounds like muffled because there's no high frequency content. And you can actually see, this is cool, up in the oscilloscope, you can see the like sharpness of the waveform gets softened. The other part of the filter is called the Q, or the resonance. Yeah, that's it. Oh, yeah, I'm totally in a position to be teaching. That's also called the peak of the filter. That sort of emphasizes the cutoff point. So here's it all the way down. Now I'll turn it up. So it just basically makes the filter cutoff point more pronounced. It makes the filter more obvious. There are these buttons up here. There's a 12 dB slope, which is more gradual. It lets some of the higher frequencies through. And then there's the 24 dB slope, which is more severe and more pronounced. If you want like a tighter filter, do the 24. But if you want some of that high-end buzziness to make it through, then do the 12. Here's the drive thing. I think it's just like a saturator. It'll sort of just add some like warmth, like fuzziness to it. One thing to watch out for with the drive though is if you turn it up too much, it starts like actually chopping off the tops of your waveforms and turning them into squares. So you can hear as I turn it up, excuse me, it turns the saw kind of square shaped actually. When I do filter, I usually like more like old style, like warmer analog type sounds, so I usually turn the drive up a little bit. Key tracking, this is interesting. Basically, it changes the cutoff level depending on which key on your keyboard you are pressing. So, unfortunately, this picture right here of the filter doesn't animate when it does this, unfortunately. But I'll turn it up a little, like all the way. See. basically what's happening is every time you press a new key, it actually changes the cutoff level of the filter depending on the key. So this is good to use, like let's say if you want it filtered down pretty soft. This is good for like bass noises because you don't want all that buzzy clicky crap coming through. So, but the problem with that is as you play, the volume of your notes actually starts dying off because you actually start playing notes that make it up out over here, that they start getting cut off. So you actually want this to open up a little bit as you play higher up the keyboard so you don't get muffled out. So I give like a little bit of key track. So you just give it a little bit and it'll prevent that. If you set it up all the way, it follows like perfectly proportionally to the key that you're pressing. So this is kind of hard to explain. I think it's the best with the noise. So I'm going to take this white noise and sort of up the resonance all the way till we get sort of like a solid tone out of it. And then you turn the key track up all the way up and the cutoff follows your keys. So you can actually play the cutoff as its own instrument. So, but I don't know, that's kind of a funky effect. Let's see what else we got here. Oh, we got this thing up here. This changes it from a low pass to a high pass, or you can leave it in the middle and it's a band pass. So here's the low pass. And here's the high pass. It's like the opposite. It lets the high through. And then here's band pass. If you want the filter to be like really pronounced, it cuts off both ends. And then you can sort of adjust it, which is nice. So if you still want some of the lows to get through. That's pretty cool. Here are some other extra shapes. Here's either a notch, they call it a notch, or like a boost. And here's a shelf. So like, let's say you wanted to cut the lows, but still let some of them get through. You don't want to cut them all the way off. So you can still hear some of the higher frequency content coming through, but I don't think you'll really be using these too much. These are more like mixing and mastering type filters. You'll probably use these in your program when you're actually like finalizing your track. So I don't know. You'll probably stick to like a low pass, 12 or 24 for most of it. Just like the oscillator volume has an envelope, the filter cutoff also has an envelope. So you adjust that down here. And an important thing to keep in mind with this envelope is that the envelope boosts, just like the volume, it boosts the cutoff from the point it is at. So Okay, so in Helm, you have these little Helm icons next to all these envelopes and LFOs and crap. So you click this, and then all the stuff you can connect it to will light up. And then you click and drag on whatever you want to connect it to, and you can set the severity that it will modify it. So I'm going to let go and then click the Helm icon to turn that off. But you can see it's actually boosting the cutoff. I wish it animated it. Serum actually animates the image, but that's basically what this is doing. It's going Oh, also if you want to get rid of, you can mouse over something that's linked and it will highlight the Helm icon next to the modulator that it's linked to. You can see when I mouse over cutoff, it lights up the filter envelope icon. You can click that and then double click that to get rid of that. You can, pardon me, you can right click and disconnect that from the envelope so that goes away. Or you can also right click the modulator and disconnect it from whatever from there. So, oh shit. So yeah, this is basically just like the amplitude envelope. You're just gonna have to play around with it and see the different envelope shapes and what they do. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, so I have the release on the filter envelope up, but when I let go, the sound just cuts off completely. That's because over here in the volume amplitude, it's actually cutting off the oscillators before the filter can decay or release. So you need to give it some actual like volume to work with. So yeah, that's one thing to watch out for. I mean, if there's nothing to filter, if the amp isn't feeding it anything, then you just won't get any sound. So make sure for that. Another thing with these envelopes, see we got a real fast attack on the amp up here. Let's turn on this unison mode. You can hear when I hit the notes, it actually, you can hear like a click. And that's because the attack is so fast that the sound is like turning on instantly, which creates that click. So if you want to get rid of that, you just add a tiny bit of attack. And it's gone. So anyway, back to the filter envelope. this envelope depth knob right here is actually the same thing as we just did. We sort of went the long way and did this. We sort of took the filter envelope and mapped it to the cutoff manually. I just did that so you can see a visual representation of it actually getting pushed open like that. But if you don't want to dick with that, it might be easier just to use this knob. This knob is like the same thing. It just controls which way, left or right on the cutoff, this envelope is going to affect it. So unfortunately you don't get any animation with that, so which is why I didn't do it, because I just wanted to help you visualize what's going on easier. But this might be easier in the long run. Once you get used to adjusting these, you might just want to just go up here and do that instead of linking all that and doing all that crap. So yeah, the severity of this knob is how far open the filter gets pushed by the envelope. So you can actually push it open pretty high. And then if you go to the left, it actually inverts it, so it starts pulling the envelope down. It starts closing it. So that's kind of interesting. Okay, so I'm going to turn that off. Even though this is animating, it's currently not hooked up to anything or affecting anything, so this filter is just sitting there not doing anything. So the next section we're going to move to is the LFO. These basically just wiggle something. These like automatically squiggle like a knob for you. So so let's say we wanted to hook it up to the tuning. So make it do that. Take the LFO, click the Helm icon, drag the tuning knob. You can actually see it start. So that's a little slow. Here's the speed of it. You can see it's in fractions because it's actually synced to like a master tempo. So if you want like the animation to be synced with the beat of your song, you use these. But if you want just like a raw like slider, you go into seconds. Give some attack. The LFOs have different shapes. Triangle and sine. Triangle's like a sine, but sometimes you can hear the points, so I usually don't use it. I usually use sine. Here's square, it just jumps up and down. Slow that down so you can hear that better. Beautiful. So that's pretty cool. All right, you can see there are 3 LFOs. Now they're separate. You say mono LFO, which means basically they're always separate and running on their own. This is kind of hard to explain. So I'll hook this up. So even if I hold down another note, it's still controlled like on the beat using that same LFO. But this also has what's called a poly LFO, and I really like this. Basically, every time you hold down a new note, it creates a brand new LFO that's running on its own time, like individually. So, try and do the same thing with the poly. So you can see they're all kind of running on their own thing, which is actually really cool. So I like that. If you're using LFO to do like vibrato on a note or something, it gives it a much fuller chorused sound if you use a new LFO for each note. Unfortunately, there's only one poly LFO. I wish there were more because it's such a cool effect, but I'm sure it might be computationally expensive to keep duplicating the LFOs like that, because every time they duplicate the LFO, they have to duplicate the knob that it's connected to or whatever. So over here you can actually hook this up to anything. So this is kind of cool. You got like a ramp, so it's hooked up to the volume. Whoa, wait a minute. Oh, that's weird. The volume, it goes on both sides of the line. I don't want that. Let's see, what can we do here? Oh, here we go. Now you notice that the sub isn't being modified by it because we didn't hook it up to the sub. So let's do that too. I mean, the possibilities are like just incredible. You can, I mean, when you click this, you see everything you can hook it up to. So I mean, you're just gonna have to play around and modify all this stuff with all these modifiers. You know, I mean, you can have a lot of fun with it. You can do the tuning, you can do the volume, you can do filter cutoff. Here, I'll do that here real quick. This is weird. It has these like step shapes down here too. Okay, these shapes are kind of interesting. This is a like random, so And then this is random too, but it's like the other one is stepped. Like you can hear it clearly change. But this is more like a noise. This is a step sequencer. It's kind of like an LFO, the same, except you can manually adjust the values that it's going to modify with. So it's good if you want to make like a rhythm. And then this knob right here sort of creates like a glide effect, like a slide between the values, so they're not instant. This is actually very sensitive. If you put it up all the way, it sort of turns it to mush. Oh, I forgot. This sub oscillator over here, it has this couple buttons next to it. So this shuffle knob like sort of shifts the waveform in a weird way. You can see up in the oscilloscope. So if you want some like extra harmonic content in the sub oscillator, you can turn that up a little bit. And then this button moves it an octave even lower. mean, it's a nice synth, you know, it sounds good. Okay, this feedback thing, I don't know. I'm not really sure what this does. Let's see what this does. Just kind of sounds like an overdrive effect, kind of like the filter drive, I think. I don't know, it's kind of weird. I don't know if I like it. Okay, oh, this mod envelope, it functions the exact same as the filter and amp, except that it's like a third extra envelope. You can attach it to whatever you want. So earlier we were doing, attach it to the noise mod, or the noise volume. I mean, you can attach that to whatever. So like the filter envelope, I mean, you can still attach it to stuff, but it will always be connected permanently to this knob right here. So if you have this knob up, I mean, these are going to be connected. But I mean, this is pretty versatile too. I mean, as long as you don't mind that whatever you connect it to is going to be doing the exact same thing as your filter animation. But you usually want the filter on its own, you know, isolated. And then the amplitude, this will always be connected to the overall volume of your oscillator mix. Let's see what else. Oh yeah, the effects over here. It actually has quite a few effects built in, which is really nice. A lot of synths don't. Reverb in particular is crucial, in my opinion. I'll turn this shit off. It just sort of gives, here, let me change this here, make it easier to hear. So yeah, it creates that space, that echo. It's really nice. It actually does spread it out over your two ears more, because the regular signal is in mono, but it creates a different reverb, slightly different echo for both ears. So that's always nice. It just helps to fill it out a bit. This is the time. You can see you can make it quite long. This is the dampening. Like the higher frequencies will get dampened by like the environment. So like, let's say you're like in a big wet soggy cave with like carpet all over the walls, like it's gonna damp. But like if you're in like a perfectly clean like crystal cube, there'd be like no dampening at all. I don't know. Without any dampening, like, I mean, this is a fake reverb, you know, it's trying to simulate the space with like digital algorithms, so without any damping, and like the high frequencies can sound kind of digital, so. And you can hear as we turn this up. And then this last knob is the dry wet mix knob. So this is the signal just coming into the reverb from the synth, no reverb on at all, called the dry signal. And then you start adding it, and this is 100% wet. This is none of the dry signal. This is entirely what the reverb adds to the overall sound. So you can adjust the balance between with that. Here's a delay. This is pretty cool. And then this sets the time. This frequency is like divided up into musical increments, so it's like set to like, it will be synchronized to your metronome, to your beat, the beat of your track. So if you're using this in, I think you said you had Logic, this will be hooked up to Logic. If you're using this standalone, like in Windows, there's this BPM thing up here. You can actually hear it change pitch as it changes speed. That's sort of an artifact. That's like, you usually don't want that. So you usually want to make sure all your stuff is set and like your time is set before you start playing. Otherwise, you know, you'll get that. If you want to change it just to like a manual timing, you can do seconds. Here's distortion. This is set mix up all the way for some reason, so I don't know, if you only want like a little bit, you can do it halfway. So that's pretty cool. The arpeggiator, this is a lot of fun. It sort of automatically hits the notes for you. So here, I'll turn that on and show you. You can set the time right here. This octaves thing. And then this gate controls, like, it'll cut the volume off. It'll make it like more stuttery, like more pronounced. So here, I'll do that. Such a goofy effect. Let's see what we got here. Note, this basically is the same thing as this key track for the filter cutoff, except you can attach it to anything. So if you want the distortion amount to increase as you play higher up the keyboard, you can attach it to that. Velocity is how hard you hit the key. So change this around here. So let's say you want the filter to open up when you hit the keys harder. So you attach velocity to the envelope depth. So now if you hit the key soft, you only get a little bit. If you hit the key harder, or, you know, I mean, you could attach any of this to anything. So, I mean, it's only up to you. It's only up to what you can think of to do. So, I mean, honestly, I'm used to programming more traditional synths that don't let you connect everything. Like, this is pretty new, the way to do this. Connect these to all these things, which is really cool. So, I mean, I'm still thinking in the old-fashioned way where everything's connected, you know, permanently to everything else, and like those are the options that you got. Like, this is real free form. You can do what you want. You can connect like this to like the speed of this, and then have this connected to that. So I mean, and there's a lot of cool crap you can do. So let's see what else we got here. Oh yeah, velocity. We just hooked up velocity to the filter envelope to open it up the harder we hit the note. But if you want the velocity to do volume instead, you can just do this. This is like a shortcut. So now if I hit the key real soft, it's real quiet. So yeah, that's usually good to do. It keeps your stuff from sounding cheap to attach like velocity to something. Just to like, if you're playing stuff live, you definitely want to do that. It just, so every time you hit the note, it'll be a little bit different depending on like how hard you hit the note. Like, it just makes it more expressive. Let's say to connect more stuff. You wanted like a vibrato. Like, I know we already did this pretty much, but let's say you want the note to be steady when you first hold it, and then the vibrato to actually kick in as you hold the note. So you're going to have to actually use this mod envelope, the attack on it. You're going to have to, the envelope, or the LFOs have this like severity knob next to them. So you can hook the envelope up to that. So you can see actually the mod envelope is boosting the severity. Unfortunately the shape doesn't change, but you can see the little dot changing. And then you can also see up here on the fine tuning, it increases as this goes up. That's actually a pretty complicated way to do that. Usually, like on other synths, like next to the LFO, they'll just have a attack knob that does all that for you and doesn't make you waste a mod envelope to do it. But I don't know, hopefully in later versions of Helm he can do that, but I don't know. This is kind of cool aftertouch. I'm not really sure. Not a lot of keyboards have this, but it lets you, like, after you've held a note down, you can apply pressure to it. And looks like Helm in Windows, just by itself, doesn't pick up the aftertouch coming out of my controller, so never mind. Here's a mod wheel. You can attach that. I mean, so you can do stuff manually with that. Here's a random thing. Every time you hit a new note, it'll do a random value. So I don't know, that could be okay. Like, say you want each note to be like out of tune every time you hit a new note to like emulate an old synthesizer that's old and crappy. You can attach that to the fine tuning. You can attach that. I'm trying to see what else is left over here. Pitch bend. This controls how far the pitch bend wheel on your controller will bend the note. So right now it's set to 2. And then you can increase that, you know. Whatever. I'm not friggin' Herbie Hancock or whatever, so I don't really use that too much. Voices. If you want just one note, you can change it down to one voice. And then this down here is called portamento or glide, as it's called sometimes. This sort of that's used mostly on mono patches with only one voice. You can do it with multiple voices though. Here it's off, here it's on. You can actually hear like a little click when it changes notes, which I really like. Whatever. And then if you set to auto, it will only bend if you have a note held down. So like, let's say I held this note and then hit another one. But if you let go of the first one before you hit the second one, it won't glide. So that sort of lets you control a little better what's gliding, what isn't. I don't think Helm's actually that great for single voice mono synth patches because the envelopes here, I'll try and demonstrate it here. Like the filter envelope, it starts from the beginning every time you hit a new note. Let's see if that mod one does that too. It completely restarts from the bottom. Yeah, they all do that, I think. And then you can hit this button called legato mode, which will sort of not make it restart when you hit a new note. So that's kind of cool. But a good monosynth will have envelopes that function in what's called multi-trigger mode. So it's kind of hard to explain. It's kind of like a mix between legato and re-trigger, in that you press a new key and it doesn't keep the envelope going like nothing happened, like what happens in legato. But it doesn't restart it all the way from the bottom like it does with legato off. It sort of is like a mix between the two, where it will restart the animation, but the cutoff will start from the point that it was just at. So if like you have a really long attack, I don't know, it's hard to describe, but it doesn't do that like abrupt jump when you hit a new note when the envelope starts completely over. So if you do want to do like bass patches or like a lead stuff in mono, I wouldn't use Helm. I would only use Helm for like polyphonic patches, stuff with like chords, you know, pads. But if you would want something that would do monophonic and has re-trigger envelopes, try either Charlatan or PG8X, because that will have I think the envelopes on those are multi-trigger, they call it. I don't know, you'll just have to open those up. The interface on those is quite different. You probably have to, might be another learning curve if you try to learn those. They're more traditional. This is sort of next gen with all this crap and being able to connect everything. Charlatan and PG8X are more old style, where you know what you see is what you get, and you just sort of have to know what everything's connected to. But yeah, I don't know, I really like Helm. It's nice. It sounds, I mean, it doesn't sound like super good. The filter is like a little underwhelming. They had this drive knob which improves it a lot though. It didn't have that in the older versions, but I think Charlatan actually sounds a little better than Helm. But Helm is just so easy to learn on, and it's like the way you can program things is so crazy. You can do like crazy crap in here that you could not do in Charlatan. So I don't know. I mean, it's good to have a couple synths, you know, for different functions, different types of sounds. But this is great. If you learn on this, I think this is probably more complicated than the one that you're trying to do in Logic. The Logic one's probably more simple, so. But it won't have pictures and it won't have animations, so. Then again, it could be harder. I don't know, but yeah, so that's about it. That goes through all, I don't know what the hell this is. What's this do? I don't know, kind of dumb. I don't care about it. Well, alright, I mean, that's pretty much it. That's everything. Saving presets, I don't really know how to do that in here. I don't really... Oh shit, I broke it. Oh. This is kind of cool. If you want to see how a sound is made, you can go on these presets and try and reverse engineer them. They're pretty complicated though. Unfortunately, you can't really see what's hooked up to what. You can see this is hooked up to something because this is green. This is hooked up to something because this is green, but you'll have to right click it. Oh, this cross mod, I have no idea what this does. It kind of sounds like shit, I think. Oh, whoa, whoa, whoa. Yeah, I don't know. I think you just turn up this knob and it makes it sound bad and awful, so I don't really touch that. So I mean, there'll be some knobs that like, you know, you don't like and you'll sort of ignore, and then there'll be like ones that you go to every time, like the reverb. You'll probably want that on most things, unless you want it to sound real dry and like artificial. Wow, he's a fucking obnoxious. Alright, well, that's about it, dude. If you have any questions, you know, feel free. If you need me to expand on anything in here, I can make another video, like going more in depth to whatever component you didn't get. You're not gonna probably get all this crap on your first run through. You're probably gonna have to like play with the oscillators and then pause the video and then play with the envelope and then pause the video and then play with the filter, etc., etc. I mean, you can't do all this at once. I mean, this took me like quite a while to be able to internalize all these components and what exactly they're doing to each other when you turn what knob. So, I mean, it's just going to take a while. So, you know, don't try and do this all at once. Don't like watch the video all the way through. Although, if you're hearing this now, you may have done that. But that's okay. Well, alright, dude. Take care, man.